Northern California, the 20th of December, 1968. On a quiet evening near Lake Herman Road, two teenagers parked their car in a remote area, expecting nothing more than a peaceful night together. Instead, their evening ended in tragedy when an unknown gunman opened fire without warning. The victims, David Faraday, aged 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, aged 16, became the first known victims later linked to the person who called himself the Zodiac Killer. At the time, investigators had no reason to believe these murders were connected to a larger pattern. There were no eyewitnesses who could identify the killer, no clear motive, and very little physical evidence. What seemed like an isolated crime would soon become one of the most infamous unsolved serial murder investigations in American history. Just months after the murders on Lake Herman Road, the violence returned. On the night of the 4th of July, 1969, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were sitting inside a parked car at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, California. A vehicle pulled into the parking area before driving away. A few minutes later, it returned. The driver stepped out and approached the couple's car. Without warning, he opened fire. Darlene Ferrin was fatally wounded, while Michael Mageau survived despite suffering multiple gunshot wounds. His testimony gave investigators one of their first descriptions of the attacker. Although the description was limited, detectives now believe they were searching for the same killer responsible for the earlier murders. The investigation was becoming more urgent, but the identity of the gunman remained unknown. On the 31st of July, 1969, less than a month after the Blue Rock Springs attack, 3 newspapers in Northern California received nearly identical handwritten letters. Each envelope contained shocking claims. The writer said he was responsible for both the Lake Herman Road murders and the Blue Rock Springs shooting. To prove it, he included details that had never been released publicly. Along with the letters were 3 sections of a 408 symbol encrypted cipher. The writer demanded that each newspaper publish its portion on the front page. If they refused, he threatened to continue killing. The letters transformed the investigation. What had begun as a murder case had now become a public campaign of fear. For the first time, investigators realized they were dealing with a killer who wanted attention as much as he wanted to avoid capture. The mysterious 408-character cipher quickly became one of the most talked-about puzzles in America. Law enforcement agencies, military cryptographers, and ordinary citizens all tried to crack the code. Then, just 1 week after the letters were published, a California school teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife Betty Hardin successfully solved it. The message revealed disturbing statements from the killer. He claimed he enjoyed killing because it was, in his words, more fun than killing wild game. He also wrote that he believed his victims would become his servants in the afterlife. Despite its chilling content, the decoded message contained no name, no address, and no direct clue that could identify the author. Once again, investigators had learned more about the killer's mindset, but not his identity. On the 27th of September 1969, the Zodiac Killer struck again, this time at Lake Berryessa in Napa County, California. A young couple, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, were relaxing near the lakeshore on a quiet afternoon when a strange man approached them. He wore a dark hood that concealed his face and a bib-like garment bearing a distinctive cross-circle symbol, later associated with the Zodiac. The man claimed he was an escaped prisoner who needed money and a car to flee the area. What happened next became one of the most chilling encounters in the investigation. Brian Hartnell survived and later provided investigators with an important description of the attacker's clothing and behavior. Before leaving, the killer walked to the couple's vehicle and wrote a message on the car door linking this attack to the previous crimes. For investigators, on the evening of the 11th of October 1969, the Zodiac Killer struck again, but this time the attack took place in the heart of San Francisco. A taxi driver named Paul Stein picked up a passenger in the city's downtown area. The journey appeared routine until the taxi reached the affluent Presidio Heights neighborhood. There, the passenger killed Stein and left the cab. Several teenagers watching from a nearby house witnessed part of what happened and immediately called the police. Officers responded within minutes, but an early misunderstanding in the suspect description meant they searched for the wrong individual. The killer escaped before police realized the error. Days later, newspapers received another letter from the Zodiac. Inside the envelope was a small piece of Paul Stine's bloodstained shirt, convincing investigators that the writer was indeed the murderer. Following the murder of Paul Stine, the Zodiac Killer became even more confident. Over the following weeks, newspapers and police departments received additional letters claiming responsibility for the crime. To prove the letters were genuine, the sender included another piece of Paul Stine's shirt, evidence that had never been made public. The messages mocked investigators, criticized the police, and hinted that the writer enjoyed watching authorities struggle to identify him. Public fear continued to grow as each new letter reminded people that the killer was still free. Detectives analyzed every envelope, every stamp, every fingerprint, and every handwritten word. Despite their efforts, none of the evidence was enough to reveal the identity of the person behind the letters. The investigation had become one of the largest criminal cases in California's history. As the investigation continued, the Zodiac Killer sent more coded messages to newspapers. Some of these ciphers were unlike anything investigators had seen before. Cryptographers from law enforcement, the military, universities, and even ordinary citizens spent years trying to solve them. While the first 408-symbol cipher had been decoded, later messages proved far more difficult. One of the most famous, the 340-character cipher, remained unsolved for more than 50 years. In 2020, an international team of codebreakers finally decoded it using modern computing techniques. Although the message provided insight into the writer's thinking, it did not reveal the killer's identity. The greatest mystery remained exactly the same. Who was the Zodiac Killer? As the investigation continued, the Zodiac Killer sent more coded messages to newspapers. Some of these ciphers were unlike anything investigators had seen before. Cryptographers from law enforcement, the military, universities, and even ordinary citizens spent years trying to solve them. While the first 408-symbol cipher had been decoded, later messages proved far more difficult. One of the most famous, the 340-character cipher, remained unsolved for more than 50 years. In 2020, an international team of codebreakers finally decoded it using modern computing techniques. Although the message provided insight into the writer's thinking, it did not reveal the killer's identity. The greatest mystery remained exactly the same. Who was the Zodiac Killer? As the years passed, the Zodiac Killer investigation produced countless theories. Detectives, journalists, and independent researchers all searched for the person responsible. Several individuals were investigated over the decades, but no suspect was ever officially identified as the Zodiac Killer. Some theories focused on handwriting similarities, while others pointed to witness descriptions or circumstantial evidence. Modern forensic testing, including DNA analysis, was also used to re-examine parts of the case. Although these efforts generated renewed interest, none produced enough evidence to conclusively identify the killer. More than 50 years later, the case remains open, and the Zodiac Killer's true identity has never been officially confirmed. Even after decades had passed, investigators refused to give up completely. Advances in forensic science gave law enforcement new tools to examine evidence collected during the original investigation. Detectives revisited fingerprints, handwriting samples, and biological evidence from letters believed to have been sent by the Zodiac. DNA technology also offered new possibilities, although the age and condition of the evidence made testing difficult. Several rounds of forensic analysis were carried out over the years, raising hopes that modern science might finally identify the killer. While these efforts produced valuable information, they did not provide enough evidence to officially solve the case. The Zodiac investigation remains an example of how even the most advanced technology cannot always answer every question. More than 5 decades after the first known attacks, one question continues to challenge investigators. Why has the Zodiac Killer never been officially identified? The answer lies in several factors. Many of the crimes occurred at night with few or no witnesses. Forensic technology in the late 1960s was far less advanced than it is today, limiting the evidence investigators could collect. Different police departments also handled different crime scenes, making coordination more difficult in the early stages of the investigation. Over the years, witnesses passed away, memories faded, and some physical evidence deteriorated. Although modern investigators have revisited the case using today's technology, no single piece of evidence has been enough to conclusively identify the killer. The mystery has endured because the available evidence has never fully answered the questions left behind. Although the Zodiac Killer has never been officially identified, the case has left a lasting mark on criminal investigations and popular culture. It became one of the most intensively investigated serial murder cases in American history, involving multiple law enforcement agencies over several decades. The letters, ciphers, and unexplained clues continue to be studied by detectives, historians, and researchers around the world. Advances in forensic science have renewed hope from time to time, but no breakthrough has conclusively solved the case. Beyond the investigation itself, the Zodiac mystery has inspired books, documentaries, films, and academic discussions about criminal profiling, forensic science, and the challenges of solving long-running investigations. More than 50 years later, it remains one of the world's most famous unsolved criminal cases. Over the years, the Zodiac Killer case has generated countless books, documentaries, and online discussions. Many theories have attempted to identify the killer, and several individuals have been publicly named as possible suspects. However, it is important to separate speculation from verified evidence. Law enforcement agencies investigated numerous leads, compared fingerprints, analyzed handwriting, examined DNA where possible, and interviewed witnesses. Despite these efforts, no suspect has ever been officially confirmed as the Zodiac Killer based on the available public evidence. This distinction is important because history is built on facts, not assumptions. The mystery remains unsolved, not because investigators stopped looking, but because the available evidence has never conclusively identified the person responsible. That is why, even today, the Zodiac Killer remains one of the most debated criminal mysteries in the world. More than half a century has passed since the first murders linked to the Zodiac Killer, yet the mystery remains unsolved. Investigators followed thousands of leads, examined forensic evidence, decoded ciphers, and interviewed countless witnesses. Despite decades of dedicated work, no one has ever been officially identified as the Zodiac Killer based on the available public evidence. The case reminds us that even with modern forensic science and advancing technology, some investigations may never reach a definitive conclusion. What happened to the person who called himself the Zodiac? Did he die without revealing his identity, or does the final answer remain hidden in evidence that has yet to be discovered? For now, those questions remain unanswered. Here at Official Verdict Room TV, our mission is to separate verified facts from speculation and present real investigations with accuracy, respect, and integrity. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more true crime investigations, unsolved mysteries, and real cases from around the world. Until next time, remember, every piece of evidence tells a story, but not every story has an ending. Thank you for watching Official Verdict Room TV. Which unsolved mystery should we investigate next? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more professionally researched true crime documentaries based on verified facts.